Welcome to the Practical Consciousness Podcast with James and Lisa, where we help you tap into your highest selves in everyday life. Hi, welcome to Practical Consciousness, the podcast with James and Lisa. I'm James.
And I'm Lisa.
The always lovely Lisa.
One of these days I'm going to say the always lovely James.
Yeah, that's... It's a lie, and you won't lie. We're honest people. So, okay. So today our topic is reaction versus response, and when to notice it, basically, because we're always about mindfulness. But when to notice it, why does it happen? Quite frankly, what the heck's the difference, right, between what is a response versus a reaction?
Isn't it the same thing?
Well, I'm going to ask you, is it the same thing?
No, it's not.
Loaded question. Okay, what's the difference?
Well, a reaction is when you don't think about it. Like somebody says something rude to me and I just immediately snap at them. Well, I never really liked the way your hair looked either.
And sometimes a reaction is not even outward, it's inward.
Yeah, could be inward. Yeah, just like ugh.
Or you tell your story.
Yes, I do have really terrible looking hair that desperately needs a haircut.
Yeah, in the middle of COVID-19, everyone's saying that right now.
Yes. So then the response would be more along the lines of somebody commented on my hair. I guess now we've gotten on this hair thing, and I just take a deep breath and not, instead of having that sort of reaction, I just kind of take a breath and think of how do I want to respond to that? Oh, that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. That she said she didn't like my hair, that my bangs are always hanging in my eyes. How do I want to respond? And it might be that I just make a choice not to say anything at all.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really important, what you just said, that's the real key is you start to check in with what is going on with you. Not you take the focus away from whatever the stimulus was, the comment or whatever, and you turn it back in and go, well, how am I feeling? What am I thinking about what that person just said?
Yeah.
And you're using your breath as an anchor to pause, which is perfect because you're giving that space to go into curiosity more than, and so you're basically breaking the pattern, right? You're breaking the cycle.
Well, and we've talked about awareness so many different times. And I think that's the beginning stage of this, is to have the awareness that, oh, maybe it's like for me, maybe I get that tight feeling in my chest when I feel like someone has insulted me. Oh, there's that feeling again. So just having that awareness that, that normally when I have that feeling, then I have my reaction where I say something really rude to the person and then regret it later.
Yes. Which that's another really good point, is like everything we always talk about, there's no good or bad here. There's no bad reaction. There's no good reaction. There's just, because sometimes it's just efficiency.
Yeah.
It's more efficient to just react in a certain way to a specific situation or stimulus or whatever than it is to sit and ponder and wonder about it. And you know what I mean? So, like brushing your teeth or some, motor function that we always do based on, somebody goes, boom, we go, ah. So we don't want to stop and go, should I be afraid? This fear makes sense right now. In the meantime, the lion's like eating your insides. So.
Okay. So it serves us sometimes.
Yeah. In other words, yeah. I mean, we don't want to paint a picture where our listeners that we're saying, never react. Because we would never say never do anything or always do something anyway, right?
Yeah.
When you were sharing just a minute ago, I I thought of a question I wanted to ask you. Who's reacting when
Good.
when a
Good
person
question.
makes a comment, whatever it is, about your hair? Like, oh, I can, maybe somebody makes a comment like, oh, I could tell you've been staying at home for 8 weeks, looking at your hair.
By your hair, I could tell.
Yeah,
It's
by
like
your hair, I could
hanging in
tell.
your eyes.
And then you have a reaction. Who's having the reaction?
Well, it's my subconscious, like I'm not conscious. I'm not like, it's not the observer. Let's put it that way. It's
Right.
not the observer in me. So I guess it's my unconscious or subconscious mind. My ego. It's my ego.
Could be. Again, we like our egos, so we're not going to badmouth the ego. But, well, we need our ego. We need intellect.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So it's the mind, basically. What you're telling me is it's either the subconscious part of your mind or the conscious part of your mind. But
Yeah.
it's your thinking. Your mind is reacting.
Yeah.
To a thought.
Yeah, it's one of those programs that we talked about where it's just like, that's how I always react. So I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's not even the mind. It's almost like it just happens.
Yeah, but it's still your mind in the sense that,
Yeah, you're right.
it's a part of your brain that's processing.
Yeah. It's fast. It's just automatic.
There's
no thought.
How do you help your clients start recognizing when they're reacting?
Well, again, we talk a lot about awareness, and we have exercises that we do that help us to start cultivating awareness. And a lot of that's mindful activities, mindful practices that help. Is that what you meant by?
Well, I was kind of thinking more like actually, like in a session or something where a client is sharing a story with you. And what I've noticed with a lot of my clients and even myself, it's usually, it's harder to recognize a reaction in the moment. It's easier to recognize a reaction as we're ruminating on a different outcome, or maybe replaying the conversation and thinking, oh gosh, I reacted there, whatever. And so a lot of times with my clients, it's during a session when they're sharing a story, or something's going on, they had a reaction, or like you said, there's a pattern where my boss, classic example, some relationship, my boss, my spouse, my kids, something, they always do this. And then I get frustrated and I don't know how to stop it. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that cycles over and over and over and over and over again. And, I just don't know how to end it.
Yeah, I don't know how to stop it.
So as a coach, how do you help them in like a moment like that start to choose to respond versus react?
Right.
Am I putting you on the spot?
You are, but I'm still coming back to the awareness thing. Like, how does that make you feel? Like, how are you feeling when that happens?
So you're saying
like physical feeling.
You start asking questions to get them to start feeling what the pattern is.
To help grow the awareness, you need to start, like, you can't make any shifts or changes or even recognize that there's something going on unless you have an awareness. So to cultivate awareness, you talk about, well, how's that feel in you? Like maybe there's some bodily, like I talked earlier about my chest getting tight. That's something that I experience with anxiety. So, do you
I love that.
Is there a physical feeling?
I love the idea of, helping them why they're in kind of a less charged situation. even why they're having the conversation with you, if you just ask, where are you feeling that? Where's that at? What's it feel like? They can start to identify, right? That's like, oh, okay. So when I react, this is the feeling I'm getting.
Yeah.
I love it. And then one of the things I do, especially lately a lot, is what I try to do is I try to, almost like we're saying that, you know, in the moment, that pause and anchoring to your breath, right? You talked about, what are you laughing at?
Sorry.
She's laughing at me, people.
No, I started thinking.
You start thinking about the cat thing? Okay, now we have to tell the story. Okay, so.
I'm so sorry. I tried to hold back.
So, real quick anecdote.
Oh my gosh.
It's so funny. She was watching I have to tell the story because she can't. She was in a Toastmasters, and a person was on screen sharing, and this cat paw kept coming
It's coming
off
up
screen
from
underneath, and she just lost it. And
I could hear my cat. I could hear her banging on the door. Think about it. And then I just started visualizing this happening to you while you were talking. I tried for a really long time to hold that back.
So, perfect example of reaction.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway,
oh my gosh, that's a good blooper.
No, it's not going to be a blooper. It's
live. We're live.
Yeah. This now you got me.
I don't even remember where you were.
Frazzled.
I'm sorry.
I was talking about one of the things I do with my clients. One of the things that's been coming up a lot with my clients is it's reaction, but it's reaction to their own. Just so folks know, I've been doing some shadow work with some of my clients where they kind of embrace the parts of us that we should do a podcast on it, but
yeah, we totally should.
You embrace the parts of yourself that you've been suppressing or running from or afraid of. And so you embrace those. And so what's happening is there's a lot of reaction to their own reactions. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I found really, really effective is, that's what we were talking about. So you talked about anchoring your breath, which is just a pause, and it allows them to see it, right? To see what's going on.
Yeah.
Get curious. So one of the things I do is, because I know for me, curiosity is like a different energy than reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I try to pull him into that curious space.
Oh yeah, I like that.
And so, it might be, it's usually, I'm a coach, right? So it's usually in the form of a question, but sometimes I can share an observation I'm having with them too. Like I'm noticing that you're reacting to what you just said. What's going on? Where's that coming from? But lately, a really good, really effective one is I ask them to check in with their intuition.
Yeah. And
I'll say, acknowledge what they just said. Maybe they've said, I'm frustrated that I'm not over this, right? That's one I heard yesterday. I'm frustrated. I'm not over this. I mean, I put in all this work and I'm still, dealing with this. So that's a reaction. In my mind, that's a reaction, frustration. And
yeah, totally.
So I said, yeah, and it makes perfect sense that you'd be frustrated. Let me ask you a question, or what is your intuition telling you about the way you're reacting to the situation, or whatever? It's a really nice shift to, you can ask yourself the same question, right?
Yeah, get curious.
It's a really nice shift into that curious energy and checking in with yourself. And usually they'll come up with, usually there's a long silence, right? Because there's a shift in this, like, we see it all the time. And then it's like, oh, it's because I'm not ready, or, you know, something like that. It's like, there's a, and I always challenge conclusions always. It's because I'm not ready. Okay, well, I'm hearing you say you're not ready to move on from that. That's what they mean. I'm not ready to move on from that. I've got more work. And then I'll say, then that's when I'll say, well, usually it's either what is your mind, or usually it's both. What is your, you know, what is your heart telling you the next step is? And I find that formulates a response. Even
as opposed to reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it gets them present.
Yes.
It gets them in the moment where they're, even though they're like ruminating on something from the past, but still in the moment, they're in the moment, in the past, kind of, you know what I mean?
Yes.
In this moment, they're dealing with it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the whole idea is just creating that space, that pause.
Well, and it's that pause and allowing a shift to happen,
right.
Not make a shift happen.
Right. But if there's no time in there at all, then nothing can happen.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah.
So
you have to have that.
So you have to have the awareness first. Got to have that. Nothing can happen if you don't have that. And then you need that space. So once you start having the awareness, you create the space. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to add that there's a really, I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before. There's a really good book called Man's Search for Meaning. And I can't think of the author's name right now. Dang it. Viktor Frankl. So real brief context. He was a doctor in Auschwitz as a Jew in Auschwitz.
Oh yeah.
And so he saw some really horrific stuff. He's a psychiatrist, but he told him he was a doctor, not a psychiatrist. And so his way of, I guess, coping through all that process was to remain true to who basically he is, to never change who he was as his authentic self.
Yeah.
And then he went on to make a practice out of that about, you know, psychotherapy on what's our life purpose? What are we here to be and do? And that can sustain you right through a phobia or whatever. But anyway, he has a great quote in there, and he says, between stimulus and response, I'm going to butcher the quote probably, between stimulus and response, it is our choice. Yeah. And in that choice is our true freedom. Yeah.
Yes. Because then you're not, no, victim is the right word.
Oh yeah, that is the right word. You're not a victim.
Well, I was thinking like a prisoner of your automatic programming and just feeling helpless and stuck. Like you were sharing about some clients feeling frustrated, like I'm stuck. I can't, I'm stuck in here. I feel trapped. I'm in prison.
Well, and I'll share with our listeners, we, Lisa and I partner on a program for mindfulness for business and mindfulness for individuals as well, but it's an 8-week mindfulness course. And what you just described in that course, we call it being caught in, you're literally caught in your pattern, your story, your reaction. You're caught in your reaction, and then you feed it, and you keep feeding it, and you keep reacting and feeding it and reacting and feeding it and reacting and feeding it. And so that's another really practical way to start discovering where you're reacting versus responding, is where are you seeing patterns repeat in your life?
Yeah.
Like every time do you get on the road, are you pissed off at everybody?
Yeah.
Chances are there's some reaction going on.
Yeah, that's a good,
So we're kind of running out of time, but I wanted Lisa to, so what I'm hearing you say is that when in the pause, and the discovery comes a choice,
Mm-hmm.
and that conscious choice becomes the response.
Right. Becomes a response instead of a reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you start making a shift? What's a couple of practical ways that you've shifted from reacting to responding more?
I would say, again, the awareness,
Mindfulness.
focusing. Yeah. Well, mindfulness and, yeah, practicing mindfulness. So for me, that's a lot of meditation and mindfulness activities. And we're doing our second session today for the
Oh
tribe
yeah, in the
on
tribe. Yeah.
mindfulness.
Yeah.
So, just a lot of the exercises that we're teaching in that, starting to practice mindful activities during the day, and just by practicing mindfulness in general, it's going to help you so that you're going to be able to have that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people just are like hands, like, I don't know, how do I have awareness? I don't know, it just happens. I can't, I'm explosive.
Yeah.
It just happens, like,
I get it. Yeah.
automatic.
Yeah.
And
I'm
so
I'm
in order
I'm
to
hot
break.
tempered, man. I'm hot tempered. It's how I
Right.
am.
So
I run
it's
hot.
how I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you do is you start practicing in other times when you're not so reactive, to practice mindfulness. And the more you practice mindfulness, the better you get at that, the better
Mm-hmm.
you get at creating that pause of just having that awareness, like, oh, here we go. Like, you'll start to just notice the beginning feelings of that explosion. Oh, there's that feeling, and you still might explode, but at least you've started. You're chipping, chip, chip, chip.
Yeah. No, that's
Little
a good one.
chips.
That is really good. Um, Kind of dovetailing on our last one. My big way, especially as of late, if I can, if I know, if I'm aware enough, like maybe I'm going into a meeting or something where I know those are places where I react a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to have a discussion with my wife about the equanimity of tasks in our house.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
it sounded really fancy, didn't it? Equanimity of our tasks.
Yes.
So what I've kind of started doing is setting an intention of saying, this is how I want to respond
Yeah.
when I feel myself being defensive or being pulled into my story, and I'm telling myself about what her intention is, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not perfect, but at least I can I'm like, because in my case, what I notice a lot, especially if it's like emotionally charged, higher up on a scale, like above a 6 or 7, sometimes the emotion is so charged that even though I'm mindful and I know I'm reacting, um, there's still the emotional energy there that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not willing to make the shift,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And especially in those situations, like I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one of the things I like to do is set the intention, because, and then it's going to sound kind of corny, but I call to my subconscious my plan. Okay, so we're about to go in this situation, and some hurtful things might be said, or some pointed attacks might come
Mm-hmm.
or perceived that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just tell my subconscious, don't react, please.
I love that.
Give me the space
Little
to,
pep talk.
yeah. I mean, coach myself,
Yeah.
yeah, and have a plan. And so then when I'm having the conversation, I feel like you said, I feel like she's pointing the finger at me, blaming me.
Pushing my button.
Yep, like pouncing on it, because she knows them. I can just say, what I find is my subconscious doesn't go there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives me the space, and then I already had the plan. So the plan is to maybe it's to mirror what she just said
Mm-hmm.
for understanding and clarity, because maybe I'm misunderstanding.
That's a good one.
And
Yeah.
so You know, an example is she's like, you don't ever help me do the dishes. I always use dishes as my analogy. I,
You do.
I think
Must be
I
some
need to think about that one.
underlying.
And my typical reaction be like, never, really never.
Yeah.
Because I hate absolutes. And then so my reaction, because I've kind of coached myself when I go in, my reaction might be like, okay, I'm hearing you say that I never do the dishes. Is that what you meant to say?
Yeah.
Never?
You got to make sure your intention behind that is correct.
Clarity. It's clarity. It's for clarity.
Just for clarity.
Just for clarity. I don't want to mistake what you said.
Yeah.
And maybe it is. Maybe she's like, yeah, you never do it. Or rarely. Maybe I mean rarely. Okay, well, rarely won't charge me and get my reaction like.
Helps get the conversation going.
Yeah. And you're,
yeah.
And the energy shifts, you know, and then you're more measured in your responses.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of good practical tips. And I can't believe the time is already up. This just flew in this one. So join the conversation, go on Practical Consciousness Podcast Facebook group, or add notes to Anchor, our excellent podcast host. And
give us feedback.
Let us know where
give us a topic.
Yeah, where do you respond? Yeah, or if you've got something to add to the conversation and you want to be a guest on our show, reach out to us, make connection, and we're happy to explore that with you. So I think with that, we're gonna say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.